Welcome back to the Ghosted Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Abby Rosenblum, matchmaker extraordinaire of many things. And I am super excited. This is my first recording of the new year in 2023, and it's already a great one. And I get to be joined by Slandy Noel, who is an amazing guest. Slandy, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we were kind of joking because it's taken us a couple times to make this happen, but the timing kind of worked out perfectly for us. It was serendipitous.
Yes, it did. I agree.
And the reason the timing worked out well, I'll kind of fill you guys in, is, January, you might be listening to this after January, but January is divorce month. And you can probably wrap your head a little bit around why the holidays, lots of pressure, spending more time with family, and also New Year's resolutions. Maybe thinking, hey, this is my time to start fresh, do something different. I did see a statistic that said divorces or filings for divorce are up 150% usually in January from November, December. Slandy, does that sound about right to you?
Yes, it does. Because, after the holidays, a lot more people are, going back and reflecting, right, on their lives and realize, okay, do I want to continue on this path? Do I want to stay in this relationship, in this marriage or not? And oftentimes, January is the month. Yeah, that is correct.
Right. Okay. So we're on to something here. And, obviously, this topic can be, heavy for people listening who are maybe going through this.
Yeah.
So we just want to let you know that we're here for you. We have lots of resources. I will explain why Slandy is an amazing resource as well if you are going through this process. And I just want to introduce a little bit of what Slandy does too, that she is an author, speaker, and divorced mom coach. So we're excited to talk all about divorce month and what that really means for people.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And of course we can talk about it because I think more people need to talk about divorce. As you're
Mhm.
aware, 50% of marriages end in divorce. It's quite surprising to me that people still find it to be a taboo subject. Right? Like when people
Right.
hear the word divorce, they're like, ugh, it kind of make you cringe a little bit. When in reality, I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we talk about the relationship and the nuances that take place in a marriage and a relationship help us to be more prepared because oftentimes people are not prepared for divorce, right? When it happens, sometimes you may be surprised by it, you don't expect it. I know that statistically speaking, women are more likely to file for divorce, but there's many
Oh,
reasons why that
interesting.
is. There are many reasons why that women are more likely to file for divorce over men. So there's that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now you got me curious. So why is it that women are more likely to file? I have my own ideas, but I'm curious more what the data says.
Well, if you think about it, of course, people usually say, "Oh, well, I hear oftentimes people talk about how women are more likely to leave a relationship and leave a marriage." Not on and people don't understand that the average age for first-time divorcees, it's really 31. So if you're thinking about
Oh,
it,
wow.
yes, it's really young, and I actually fell in that category. I know personally when I was married for almost 10 years. I was 31, almost 32 when I got divorced. So what we don't seem to realize is when you are married, you're in a relationship and you're giving it your all, right? Most of the time women leave the workforce to have children, right? They leave.
Right?
Yeah, they're choosing to take care of the family, they're choosing to take care of the husband and support and all of that. So if you are married and you expecting to be married forever, because I don't think I've ever met anyone who say, oh, I want to get married just to get divorced. That's not the end goal. You want to stay married,
Right. We'd be
but
worried about that person.
exactly, as we should. It's like if your intention is to get divorced, probably marriage is probably not for you. But one of the reasons why women usually, of course, about 70% of divorces are initiated by women, and they're usually younger. It's because oftentimes women are looking at their lives. They're like, okay, I just gave 5 years, 10 years to this individual. We are married, we have children, but I'm not being cared for. I'm not being protected. I'm not being provided for. And I can do it all on my own. So if things are that bad, now it only
Mhm.
gets worse. So, of course, naturally, most women will view it and say, maybe it's best that I leave now that I'm in my 30s, right? Or even 40s, because that gives you an opportunity to get remarried if you so choose. Because not everyone wants to do that. Some people do. But it gives you the opportunity to really start focusing on you while you'll still have the energy, the youth, the strength, right? Of course, 20 to 30% of divorces are initiated by men. So people are looking, they're like, well, men are more likely to be devoted to marriage. Is that really true? No, because men are more likely to divorce you after the kids leave off to go to college, right?
Oh,
So
interesting.
yes, they're more likely to leave when these kids are between the age of 18, 20, 22. And what happened to women? You are more likely to be in your 50s and 60s. So are you likely to find a mate? The likelihood of you getting remarried again, it's pretty slim. And if you're thinking about it, a 50, 60, 70-year-old man can decide, oh, I'm going to marry a 30 or 40-year-old. They have that option.
Right.
So, do women have that option? No. So naturally, when a woman's younger and she has the vitality and she's still, they probably have younger children, they may look at it and said, okay, I will not be spending the next 10, 15, 20 years on working on this when I see that there's no way out, right? Like it's not going to get any better.
Right. And, it is so interesting to think about that too, because as women, like our dating clout is higher earlier on. Whereas for men, it only grows as they get older, like what you're saying. You
Yeah.
could be a guy in your 60s, 70s. I see it. They'll reach out to me sometimes for matchmaking, and they'll be
Mhm.
like, yeah, I could date anyone from 30 to 60, but
Yeah.
they might prefer something on the younger end.
Yes.
So, it is definitely, a smaller dating pool for the women who are in their 50s and 60s. It's still possible. But, just know that be patient. It's a little bit of a smaller dating pool.
Yes. I love the way you just said it. It's like it's having patience, right? And understanding that, of course, I hear women say it all the time. Oh, well, I'm 50 and I'm getting hit on by a 20-year-old, 30-year-old. Yeah, it's very possible, right?
Mhm.
Like if you are a woman who takes great care of yourself, you and you're not looking to have children at that age, right? You're older, like your kids are off to college. Most women who are in their 50s are not thinking, oh, I want to have a baby. I want to have more children. So yeah, you may find younger men who want to be with you, who want to spend that time with you. However, if having like more long-term relationship and marriage, being remarried is the long-term goal for you, it's a smaller pool. It's a much more smaller pool. And I think a lot of us don't think about it. We don't want to talk about it. Of
Yeah.
course, we live in a society today where they tell women to stay young forever. You see, don't get gray hair, don't have any wrinkles, just stay young. When that's not the way life works, you
Right.
know.
Except maybe for you, Slandy. I don't know. You look like you haven't aged. We were just talking about this.
I'll take that as a great compliment and say thank God. But here's the thing, as we were talking earlier, I have a 14-year-old, right? Like when you start pushing your late 30s and looking at 40 in the face, you're like, oh my goodness, what do I want to do, right? You want to live more intentionally. So I find that, for me at this state of my life, when I'm like, okay, 40, okay, 40's around there. Okay, all right. What do I want to do for myself, right? To be intentional. So yeah, you may not look the age. Of course, I hear people say, oh, 40 is the new 20 or the new 30, whatever. Okay, that may
Mhm.
be. However, you're still not 20, right?
Right.
It is what it is. You may look amazing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Dating someone who's younger, but we always have to be thinking, okay, long term, if we want long term, right? And a lot of women want long term, um, just like a lot of men want long term, right? I love the way you just said it earlier. It's like when you find these men coming into your matchmaking, asking for your matchmaking help, they want to date younger women. They prefer young, the 60-year-olds are looking for a 40, a 35-year-old, and even a 30-year-old. So they prefer that.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is so interesting. I think my dad would be fine with me saying this on the podcast, but he's a perfect example of this. My parents got divorced like right when I graduated college, kind of like what we were talking about. Kids are grown out of the house. And since he has dated only women that are like half my mom's age. So,
Yeah,
you
it's
know, that they can do that, I guess.
it's not that uncommon, right? Because society tell men that as they get older, they become more distinguished and they have, you know what I mean? As opposed to
Right.
telling, but for women, they tell women, oh, ooh, you older, you 50? Oh, when it's like, no, to me, I feel like the older a woman gets, the better she gets because the wiser you are, the smarter you are, right? And you know who you are at that age. You know what you stand for. So I find that women who are in their 30s and up, because even as I work with divorced mothers, those who are older, they tend to know what they want more often than,
Oh, totally.
right? They already set in their ways where they're like, no, I'm working with a mom right now. She's 33 years old. She's like, no, I know what I want, right? I've been married. She has a little one. She has a 2-year-old. She's like, no, I know that I want someone to do life with, and I want someone who can be a great stepdad to my child. And these women, they have what they have everything, right? They have the career, they have the funds, they have a home, they have a car. So they're not necessarily looking for a man to come in and feed them, right? To take care of them in that sense. So they're
Hmm.
looking for that emotional connection, right? They're looking for somebody who they can really rely on, and vice versa, right? You know what you,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there is no woman who comes to me who's 50 and older who isn't like, this is what I want. I know it. And I'm like, oh, this is the best. You're so focused and it's amazing. Obviously there's an element of keeping an open mind and all of that
Yeah.
too. But something I've noticed that I'm kind of curious of your thoughts on is, I feel like a lot of single moms or single dads that I work with prefer to also date someone who is a single mom or single dad because it's kind of hard, don't you think, for someone who doesn't have kids to understand, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to cancel, like something came up or there's no babysitter or, fill in the blank here.
Yes. So, of course, it's a little bit easier if you are a single parent to date another single parent, right? Because there's, if you're looking at it, the values, the standards, the understanding, they're more aligned,
Hmm.
right? So, you don't have as much time. As a single parent, you are busy working, you are busy taking care of the home, you're busy taking care of the children. So, the little time you have, you want to maximize on it. So naturally, you understand if the other person is also a single parent, they have a better understanding, right?
Right.
And they're more patient with you. So, it's interesting you mentioned that because I have one of my sisters, she's single, she doesn't have children. She's like, I'm not going to date people. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great that you recognize that you can handle that level of, of work. It's a lot of work, you
Hmm.
see, because that person won't have as much time for you. They need to prioritize, their children, their career, and everything else. So it's very understandable. Now, does
Right.
that mean you can't date someone who doesn't have children? No, it doesn't. It just means that that other person will have to have more patience and
Hmm.
and be more understanding and really maybe be in it for the long haul, you see. And they have to be also accepting of children because not everyone wants to be a parent, right? Some people do, some people don't. So being with someone who aligns in regards to the family structure,
Hmm.
because blended family is a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could only imagine. I feel
Yeah.
like at least I'm lucky my parents got divorced when I was adult, so I've never had to deal with that really.
Yes.
But, it's just something kind of interesting to think about too of, almost if you are a parent dating someone who isn't, it actually could work out better if they are understanding because then you're not dealing with, okay, is this your week on with your kids, your week off with your kids? What if you both have alternating weeks and
Yeah.
then you just never get to see each other? So
Yeah.
I think being open and obviously, communicating, I always tell people who have kids, communicating that early on, that you do have less time. And I see you nodding, so I'm sure you agree.
Mhm.
Because
Yes,
otherwise, you got to set those expectations.
100%. I love the way that you said, communicating, right? Communication is key in any relationship,
Yeah.
but it's even more important in a relationship where children are involved. Because when you have kids, it's a package deal. And not everyone wants to deal with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. They have the right to say, no, my time is for me. And it's not to really be so concerned about your children. It's very understandable because kids are work. We have to accept that they are, and they need more of our attention, more of our time. And being a parent means not being as easily accessible. And it also may mean that you may not have your partner be sleeping over at your home, right? Because I'm very much against that. I always feel like, when a single parent is dating, it's best that they don't introduce the children to the person they're dating until they know for sure that this is someone who is there to stay. Now, that's not to say we ever going to be 100% on anything, right? Like, there's no such thing. But if you guys already are having that dialogue and you know that you in it for the long term, and both of you guys agree that it's a good time for the children to meet, your partner, great. But even after that, I still feel like children don't need to have different people in their space that way. Like, because the last thing you want is to break off that relationship. Your children are extremely attached to this individual, right? And now you are starting all over. Not only do you have to heal from that breakup, now your children have to heal from it as well. So it's very important that, as single parents, that we're mindful, when we're
Right.
dating. We have to be intentional about it.
Do you have a time frame ever that you advise people on of, hey, wait this many months or anything like that?
Oh, I like that question because I've been asked that question so many times. I don't necessarily think there's a time frame, for it. Do I think you need to meet someone and 2 weeks later to introduce your children to that person? No, that is not
I would
wise.
agree with you there.
It's not wise. However, as you getting to know someone, here's the thing, Abby. I always tell people when you are dating, intentionality has to be the first thing. You have to be intentional. So if you are dating just to date, you just like getting to know someone or you just going out to have fun, that's different. But if you are dating and you're thinking of the long term, you're thinking, okay, this is someone I want to build something great with, you have to start thinking, okay, how do I make sure that I get to know this person? I take the time to get to know this individual because you are not the only person who's going to have to live with this individual. Your children will
Right.
have to deal with them as well. So taking the time to get to know them in a whole different, a deeper level. I'm a big fan. I'm going to say this. Some people may agree, some people may not. But personally, I'm a big fan of abstinence. I truly believe when you're first starting dating someone, to wait on having sex. You see,
Like wait until marriage, or what do you think?
okay, so here's the thing. Personally, I think you should wait until marriage. However, I also understand that people are human beings. And I know that sometimes, we feel the certain urges, especially if you've been intimate before, right? Like you have those feelings. And if you really care about someone that you're dating, you want to share that intimacy. It's very understandable. However, the longer you wait, the better. So giving yourself enough time to get to know the person and not complicating it with sex is very important. The first few months, the first 2-3 months, wait. You see, get to know that person. Get to know, their blind spots, right? Get to know what tick them off and get to know what they enjoy about you and what you enjoy about them outside of the bedroom. Because the minute you sleep with someone, right, things become complicated and you may not see them for who they are. So if you choose to do it very early on, it might cause a lot more problems down the road. That's just from my perspective, especially in regards to if you have children, the stakes are higher. So you have to be a little bit more careful in making sure that the person you are choosing is really someone that you are truly connected with on a higher level, an emotional level and a spiritual level and a intellectual level. It's very important that you guys know that the things that you value the most and the things that he values the most, they align.
Right. And then, people always worry, well, what if we end up having sex and then it's awful and then I've just wasted 3 months of my life? That's what people always ask me. And I'm like, you know what? If you align with someone and you have all these great things in common and you have this deep emotional connection, I'm going to bet that you're going to have also a good physical connection. And it might not be amazing the first time. I think movies give us this idea that it
Ye-
is.
Yes. It's like, I love that. Here's the thing though. We always have to remember, okay, when you first getting to know someone and you're choosing to be intimate with that person, I'm pretty sure there's some level of nervousness there, right? Like you may not be all like ready to relax and be this, you especially for us women, we more tense, we more like, okay, how do I look when I'm in this position and this way? So I think it's very important that we give ourselves, some grace and give the other person some grace. Because the way I love the way you just put it, if you guys align on what's more important, then it's become a little bit easier for you guys to put in more work to make that part of your relationship work as well, right? Because relationship doesn't just come so easily. Like if you're thinking about it, everyone's different. We have different upbringing, different backgrounds, different beliefs. So
Mhm.
naturally that's going to play out in the relationship, right? And that person's going to bring the best as well as the worst out of you, and it's okay. The same applies with being intimate with one another, right? So being able to give each other that grace and giving, talking about it, communicating about, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and how we can make it work is very important.
Right. And if you do that really early on, you might not feel comfortable saying, hey, this worked for me, or this didn't, or I'd like you to do this over something else.
Yeah.
If it's that early on, you might not feel comfortable
Yeah.
communicating that. I know many people would, but honestly, most people probably wouldn't. So I do like your idea. I think waiting till marriage might be a smaller group of people, but I
Yeah.
think waiting a few months
Yeah.
is totally reasonable, especially if you have, other stakeholders like kids in the situation. I think that's really big.
Yes. It's interesting. The way you just mentioned having a higher stake, like we talked about that. It's like if you're putting all of that into consideration, you start understanding, okay, am I in this relationship just for that? Or is
Hmm.
there like, you know what I mean? Like you see the greater picture. And I truly believe the older we get, the wiser we're supposed to get anyway, the wiser we're supposed, and the more understanding that we have for one another. Do I believe that, of course, a very good friend of mine always teased me because every time I said to her, no, I truly believe people should wait for marriage. She's like, oh, the reason why you said that is because you've never had bad sex. Because if so she teases me on that all the time because she says, if you've ever had it, then you'll understand why it's a bad idea. But then I said to her, we also have to remember that person is nervous, we nervous. But if we're
Hmm.
choosing to communicating, we live in a society where they tell us, especially for us women, to not talk about sex. I was born and raised in Haiti. Sex is not something we talk about at all. I
Hmm.
didn't hear anything about it. Like, seriously, I was 22 years old, getting ready to get married, while my father sat me down and said, now that you engage, I just want to tell you something. And I said, sure, go ahead. And he said to me, well, I just want you to know that just because you guys are engaged doesn't mean that he gets to have access to you. That was the extent of our conversation. But, you know,
And did you kind of know what he was getting at, or?
I kind of knew where he was
Yeah.
getting. I thought it was very bizarre, right? Because I had just graduated college and we're getting ready to get married. But he was like, "Oh, you wait, just because you engage doesn't mean you should be doing that now. You wait until marriage." And I thought, okay, that is strange because
Hmm.
we live in a society where people don't want to talk about it when really sex is a beautiful thing. It's something that, like we should talk more about. So and if you've been married before, you've been in relationships before, long-term relationships, you should be at a point where we want to reprogram ourselves to understand that it's important, and it's going to be important to your partner, and it's
Hmm.
okay to be open about it, to have that dialogue. the first, month of the relationship, it's okay to say to this person, this is my belief, you know, and I want to know what your beliefs are in regards to sex. And let's see if we align on that. And that's important because the more we talk about it, the more comfortable you become with one another, then the easier,
Mhm.
that's from my perspective, the easier it becomes. That's,
Oh, totally. I
yeah.
completely agree with you for sure. And, something that I've noticed too, as, Gen Z is starting to date more, is that most of the people who come to me are extremely open about talking about sexual preferences. I feel like majority of people are more sexually fluid as well. And just thinking about, you know, hey, I want to communicate this with someone. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's like a great trend that I see, where, when I talk to people who are, more millennials or Gen X, it's a little more taboo for them to tell me about anything sexually they might be looking for in a partner.
Yes. It's interesting you just said that because I'm a millennial. And when I speak to other women of my age group, those who are in their 30s, it's really amazing to me how they're like, oh, no, we've never had this conversation. I have a client that I'm talking. I said, but you never had that conversation. She said, no, because I figured we'll know what to do. I'm going to, and I said, no, and the fact that you not only do they not have that conversation, they're not, as women, we're not even, told, we're not even trained, right, or taught to ask even someone's status. And it's like, we should. We deserve
Mhm.
to know that because your body is your temple, right? And it's very important that you take great care of it, responsibility of it. And if you would choosing to share that part of you with someone, you should know their status. You should know what they are into. Because then okay, if we align in that way, great. And if we don't align, at least you give that person an opportunity to go elsewhere, and you give yourself that opportunity too to open up and see someone else, you see.
Right. And when have we ever just been like, oh yeah, we just figure it out and we read each other's minds? Like that's never happened to me in a relationship. So
No, it doesn't work, right? Because we have to remember that we are different. We're different individuals. I'm different, and the people you're gonna be seeing, you're gonna be dating, they're different, right?
Mhm.
And because we have different beliefs, a different perspective on life, we also have to
Right.
remember we're gonna have these different perspective even in regards to sex and dating and
Oh,
relationship.
for sure. I
Yes.
love where this conversation has gone, and I just remembered, were we talking about divorce month? It all
we
relates.
we certainly were, weren't we?
I want to make sure just towards the end of this episode, I kind of bring it back so we can talk a little bit more too about, people who are maybe in the beginning stages of going through divorce. Maybe they're not even ready to start dating yet.
Yeah.
I guess what would be your advice to someone who maybe has just filed for divorce, maybe at the beginning of this year, or they're thinking about going down that road? I know you had kind of hinted at you have some tips for people who are, not even ready to get to the dating part yet.
Yes. So my advice to anyone who is considering divorce right now is to really be emotionally prepared for it. Be ready for that because, and always remember to make a list of the pros and cons, right? Because we live in a society where they tell us, oh, one way is the other, is better than the other, when it's not true. It's very important that you understand the gravity of the decision that you are going to make because
Mhm.
it's going to change your life. It is like a death. It's like a death, and you are going to have to grieve through that process. So first, make sure that you understand why you're leaving that marriage, and it's the best decision for you. And second, make sure that you're prepared financially, right? If you are a woman and you're not the one who, your partner is the main provider, understand that your finances will be impacted. Make sure you
Mhm.
have a place to stay for you and your children. That's very, very important, right? Because if we don't have the financial means, prepare ourselves for it. Maybe start saving before you even file, right? Make sure you keep up with your documents, all your
Mhm.
documents, keep, with your bank statements, 401ks and mortgage statements, all your bills, keep up with these things and start building your own credit.
Right. Because, yeah, imagine you leave a relationship and then you're like, oh my God, someone else has been maybe the main breadwinner, whether it's the man or woman, and now I'm out on my own.
Yes.
And I know finances is one of the biggest reasons people get divorced. Do you feel like that is still pretty accurate?
It is. I mean, of course, there's infidelity, there's
Yeah.
non-alignment, there's, of course, finances. Finance is very important. I know, we don't want to talk about money. And I'm like, I don't understand why, because we should, because money is a big deal. If you don't have money, you can't provide for yourself and you can provide for your children. So I always advise, as women, my clients, to always first make sure that if they're not the ones who's providing or helping provide, in the family, to make sure that they start saving, right? Get a part-time job. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you don't have work, start thinking, okay, what skills do I have and I can utilize to make money? Because you're gonna need money. We need money to survive, right? So if you don't have the finances, it's gonna make things very, very difficult. And that's one of the reasons why 20% of divorced mothers are more likely to get help. Oh, can you hear me
Oh,
now?
yeah, we're still here. We're
Okay,
still
good.
here.
Okay, they're more likely to seek, governmental assistance, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, they don't have the financial mean to provide for themselves and their families. So it's very
Yeah.
important that you start thinking, okay, how can I provide for me? What skills do I have? And how can I capitalize on those skills?
Mhm. And do
Very,
you find, the people that come to you, they're going through divorce or post-divorce, do you find that a lot of them, they've kind of given that marriage everything that they've got, that maybe they did couples therapy, they tried all kinds of things, or do you feel like people are more like, I just didn't even want to try that and we're done? I wonder if some of that feeds into the higher divorce rate, if people aren't maybe saying, okay, we tried every single thing. Obviously, every situation is different too.
yes, of course, every situation is different, but I find that most women who come to me, when they're considering divorce or they recently filed divorce, is because that's just the last resort, right? They've
Hmm.
tried everything else, and their partners, most of them have gone to therapy, most of them have done some work on themselves, and they realize that it's just not working out, right? And that's when they decide to file for divorce. Of course, we have this belief out there where people are like, oh, people just give up because it's easy. It's not true. It's not
It'd
true.
be easier to stay in the relationship,
It's
probably. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. It's easier to stay. I mean, people are afraid of changes, right? People are afraid of change. Nobody wants to get out of their comfort zone. Most people want to stay in their comfort zone because we've been, programmed to stay in our comfort zone. It takes a lot of courage for someone to decide, okay, I'm gonna walk away from a relationship that you've built on for a very long time, and you're gonna walk away from it and having to start over. It's a
Hmm.
very difficult decision. And most people, when they're making that decision, it takes a little part of them. And to tell you the truth, you never recover from a divorce. You never fully recover. Even in the future, part of you will always feel like, to some degree, that um, maybe I shoulda, woulda, coulda. There's
Hmm.
always that little part of you. So that's one of the reasons why, I tell people, take the time to really go through all that thought before, go through your thought process and before you make that decision,
Right.
because it's a big decision, you
And
know?
how does that process work when someone reaches out to you? Kind of fill us in if people are listening and are curious about talking to you. How do you work with people?
So, most women, most people, most of my clients, they come to me via social media. It's when they
Hmm.
see my videos or they visit my website. And of course, they reach out. So normally, when they reach out to me on social media, they DM me, and then I set up a 15 to 30 minutes free consultation with them. And then we start talking about, what the key results, what do they want out of, like coaching, right?
Hmm.
Because the end goal is what's important. What can we work on? And it's not, I mean, there have been some potential clients who reach out to me. And after that initial consultation, I realized that I cannot work with them because they're not ready. Emotionally, they're not really ready to do the work, because my work is
Mhm.
really helping women to redefine their identity, to become great co-parents, to be financially independent, and live a more holistic and peaceful life. And oftentimes, sometime, a woman will come to me, she's not ready. She's still in that state of, of pain, of anger, and oftentimes making some poor decisions, and they're really not ready to follow the program that I have
Mhm.
set in place. So
Got it. And how can people reach out if they're listening and want to connect with you?
of course, they can find me on social media, Slandy Noel. It's SLANDYNOEL. They can find me on Instagram. They can reach out via my, oh my goodness, my website, www.slandynoel.com. And they can download my free ebook. If you go into a divorce right now or recently break up, you left a relationship and you're struggling with that, definitely visit my website and download my free ebook, and that can give you a little bit of a direction.
Perfect. And we will put all that info in the show notes if you are listening and want to find out more. If you're watching the YouTube video, just look below us, it will be there. And any other parting words of wisdom? I know we've had so much amazing advice and fun conversation today. Anything else you want to tell our single listeners?
I want to tell everyone who's listening, who's single right now, to remember not to rush it. Don't rush it. You see, take your time, because what's yours will always come to you. Take your time and listen to your intuition. So when you're out there dating, go and meet different people, date for data, just gather data. Take your time, be patient with the process, gather as much information from people as possible before you make a final decision. Don't feel like you have to rush it. Don't feel like you have to quickly get into a relationship and quickly get married. Make sure that when you deciding on dating, that you truly are ready emotionally, and spiritually and physically. That's very, very important.
Such great advice, especially as we're starting a new year. I know a lot of people have New Year's resolutions to date differently, and all of that good stuff. And I love what you said about date for data. That's got
Yes.
to be somewhere on your social media if it isn't already.
Yes. Did for data, get information, you see, because when you're gathering information, you really get to know that individual for who they are, and not
Mhm.
what, and not what, and make sure that make sure you're ready for that. Because oftentimes we think we want something, and we may get that thing, and we fumble, we mishandle it. So make sure that we are ready, that our heart is clean, and we're not dealing with our own traumas, past relationship traumas, and bringing that
Yeah.
into someone else's life. That's very important.
Oh, seriously. I think it might be the most important thing we said this whole episode. People have to wait till the end. Then you got it.
Yes.
Well, Slandy, thank you so much for joining me. This was so fun. And I hope people reach out to you if they're curious to learn more, if they're going through a divorce, went through a divorce, considering it. Listeners, please reach out and make sure you stay tuned for more ghosted episodes. And Slandy, hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure being on this podcast. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Awesome.